Hey everybody, Edo here, and I am super excited today because I have Danni Loe on the line. Say hello, Danni.
Hello.
Hey, Danni. And so Danny's currently the associate marketing manager at Renegade Studios, and I've interviewed Scott. What's his last name?
Ada.
Gata, thank you. In the past, but actually, we met when you were working as a sales manager at IELLO, probably at many cons. I can't remember which one. It could have been Gen Con. It could have been another. Because with Gaming with Edo, I'm often looking and talking with publishers about their games, and you're always there managing and handling it. So, to dive in, though, one of the things I've been trying to do on this channel is just talk to different people in different roles within the industry, how they got there, what it's like, that kind of thing. So, for you, I believe Yellow was your first game job, right? Or was it?
Yeah, I am an industry baby. Before Yellow, I was working at the Santa Barbara Zoo in California and
Not
also going
bad.
to school. So
What were
nothing,
you what were you studying in school?
I studied French in education.
Oh,
So I thought I was going to be a French teacher. And
and the
now I'm
zoo,
not.
and the zoo thing was just zoo. That was just the job,
I was just taking care of the goats, on the weekends, as you do.
as you do. Well, did the French thing have anything to do with Yellow? So how did you cross over with them?
Well, I'd worked at a game store before as just a salesperson, another part-time job in college. But once school started, I had fewer hours at the zoo. Weekend goading does not pay rent, so I was
Sure.
looking for another job and basically went onto my university's Craigslist. And there was a job listing for board game customer service. And I was like, oh my gosh, that sounds awesome because gaming was already my hobby.
Sure.
So I applied, and there was a cover letter that had me answer a few questions, one of them being name your top three games. And so I answered, which is still true, Through the Ages, Agricola, and then, a rotating, whatever the newest hotness favorite.
Sure. But that's already a pretty good answer. You
Yeah,
know,
like
you,
they're games, good ones. And so I was apparently one of the only people who didn't put Uno, classic family games. So I interviewed the next day, and I started work the day after that.
and so what? Okay, so and now it's with like Yellow US, or what was the company that ended up hiring you in that?
Oh,
Was
so
it
that was Yellow, the U.S.
and
branch.
and then so what? Are they based in Santa Barbara?
Stefan's in Santa Barbara, and then I had coworkers spread across the U.S. So Florida, Nevada, a little bit of everywhere.
And okay, well, so hold on, a couple quick things. On the zoo side, just
Yeah.
interesting. I worked for a game company called Blue Fang Games for a long time that made the Zoo Tycoon series.
Oh,
So like
awesome.
I was around zoos all the time. So kudos to you for working in the zoo. But so what in that role was that exclusively conventions? Was it other events? Like what was your day to day? I mean, it was part time, right? Or was it full time?
I started out part time, and this was 4 years ago. So I was just customer service, and then because I needed to pay rent, I went to all of my coworkers. And I'm like, "How can I help you? Do you have more things for me to do?" um, so I then started doing organized play, and then the website and community management. So I just like ended up with multiple hats on my head. And then Sarah went to Renegade. I took over her job responsibilities. So eventually I went from customer
Sarah
service.
Erickson.
Yeah. Who is the sales manager at Renegade now. Um, so yeah, went from part-time to full-time sales manager. Plus
And
all
you
the,
there's something interesting there, right, to talk about, which is and sort of came up when I interviewed, I think, Paul Peterson, who like started out as a somebody who would like comment on this community thread on the boards on Magic or whatever game, and then ended up, Wizards of the Coast needed somebody to help out with more of the customer service, and then help out with more. And sort of that idea of this is super entry level thing, right? You coming in and I mean, presumably like dealing with, missing parts and people who are, want to know what, there's a mistake in the rules or like whatever. And we'll talk about that in a second, but you're starting at that little piece of work, but then proactively looking for more, right? And at the time you needed to pay rent or whatever the reason, but there really is that opportunity. And I see it with a lot of people I've spoken to sort of just get your foot in and do work and be talented and work through and move up. So, I mean, I think that's pretty awesome. What, just on the customer service tier, just before we go through the rest, right? Like, what would you describe as the day-to-day of that role from your experience at a company like IELLO, which is a pretty big publisher?
Yeah, sure. So lots of emails. So we'd get the customer service replacement part forms that we'll have to go through and assess if it was our fault, if we'd replace it for free and whatnot, or if we were just going to be nice and send along promos. There's also all of the online communities that you have to keep an eye on. So all of the BGG questions and Facebook and Twitter, all of that, because people ask rules questions just anywhere.
And they have a big catalog, right? Like I'm in a world where there's like 1 or 2 games I have to deal with, and I just do it myself. But they have quite a number more people and games.
Yeah, I subscribe to all of the titles in our catalog, and I'd wake up in the morning to like 60 BGG notifications. Takes a minute.
And so you have to become very quickly, because even if you're a gamer, you haven't played all of IELLO's games, right? Like you have to very quickly become an expert on their catalog, right?
Yeah, it's true. And I experienced the same thing when I switched over to Renegade. I hadn't played all of their games. I knew just a couple. And because I managed the community online for Renegade as well, I was like, all right, let's just have a giant game day where I learn everything. But the fans are really helpful with that too, because by asking questions, I get educated as well.
Right. And so... Right. And so the in terms of, so you went through the customer service stuff and you're dealing with the customers, the games. I mean, it's a great way to learn all about a company and their line, right? And then from there, and also I'll just mention, because I started in QA, also an amazing way to understand the players, right? Getting a feel for like what they enjoy, what they get confused about, how to do, just sort of what the voice of the people, so to speak.
Right.
But so then you start taking on other people's extra work, or however you want to call it, overachieving, and so what types of things did you take on at that stage?
After customer service, because
you mentioned them. I guess just sticking to like what the specific work was.
So for organized play, that's working mostly with retailers, getting them all of the promos and posters and prizes that we need to run tournaments. And so for IELLO, it was King of Tokyo mostly, right? So that would be reaching out to them, adding them to a map of all of the stores participating, contacting winners and inviting them to the nationals. And then that kind of transformed into all of the convention support. So planning all of the events in demos and tournaments at Origins and Gen Con, which is real fun. It's one of my favorite parts of the job. Awesome.
And so you, because again, I'm learning all of this right now, right? So the, my interactions with you at events, it sounds like you also set up the events. I mean, you were always participating in them, but you were also responsible for like coordinating them and putting them together and getting everything to happen.
Yeah. Well, at IELLO, I managed, I planned all the events, the decorations, which games we'd have. Tim Mativier ran the demo team, but now at Renegade, I plan the events and also manage the demo staff. So, yeah, all the events happening since Origins have been my creation.
Awesome. Well, and hopefully they've been great. I mean, I haven't participated in them, but but hopefully it's well. And so, okay, so you, and this is, now we get to talk about relationships to a degree, right? So, Scott had worked with Erica in a past life, right? And then ultimately brought her over to Renegade, right? Is Erica, right? That's right. I'm getting her name right.
Erickson.
Sarah Erickson. I was like, you're not reacting like I got the name right. This is an early morning call. I apologize to everyone with my new schedule. I have to do this in the morning. I was interviewing Sen, and like I was blanking as well. So I used to do these in the evenings, and it was way easier. Okay, but I digress. Sarah Erickson, not
Yes.
Erica, Sarah, uh, goes over with Scott, and you're still, you take on all this responsibility at Yellow, and then, how did the transition happen? Were you just sort of looking for something new? What was that move over like?
Yeah, so I moved to Renegade the end of May
Pretty
2018.
recently, yeah.
It's been like 3 months or so. Um, this past year, I've made a bunch of changes in my personal life. Like I've moved cities and other things. So I was looking for a change in my career as well. Also, I just wanted more experience because Yellow is my first job in the industry, and
Right.
I've met so many people, and I just wanted to keep learning. So it seemed like a good idea to move on and go to this company that I really admired.
Cool. And so without, not getting in anything specific about the different companies, but in terms of new things that you've taken on and learned, so you transitioned and it's associate marketing manager, but it sounds like you're doing a lot of the stuff you did as a sales manager, in terms of the demoing and the setting things up. What, in your new job, in your new role as you jump in, I mean, it's only been 3 months, so it's not, it's pretty early, but like, what are some of the new and interesting things you've taken on, or what are some of the new and interesting things you've seen now that you're seeing more parts of the industry?
Right. So one big difference is that Renegade does a lot of licensed games. So just this morning, we announced our new Ghostbusters card game. Uh,
I didn't know that.
oh yeah, it's designed by Erica and Daryl. Um,
Awesome.
Canada. So yeah, it's super exciting. But licensed games weren't something I'd had any experience in prior. Um, and that's part of the reason I changed cities as well. Like I moved to San Diego from Santa Barbara, because it's closer to Los Angeles, and now
But still not Los Angeles, right?
it's still not LA, which is a good thing. I can drive somewhere in 5 minutes, and it's great.
Well, and you're near the beach.
Yeah, there's.
I mean, San Diego's a pretty place. Anyway, keep going.
So licensing, really exciting. We've got our Power Rangers Kickstarter up right now. So that's just a completely different experience. I've also done a lot more marketing because Sarah and Scott are both really experienced, and we collaborate all day long. We've got a Skype call later today, actually, and we had a Skype call 2 days ago. We're just always talking about how we can talk about games. So in 3 months, I've learned so much.
Sure.
And it's exciting.
Awesome. And so, right, well, a couple things. One, for those just watching, these videos don't necessarily appear the day they're filmed, so it may be that Ghostbusters was announced 2 weeks ago, and you super know about it now, even though you should have known about it already. And this Power Rangers campaign, do you know how long it goes, or when it
Yeah.
when does it end?
Ends at 6 p.m. Pacific time on September 6th.
September 6th.
That is next Thursday.
Next Thursday. I will look at my schedule and see if I can't get this to happen to appear before then. Just not that, I get that many views, but hey, if I timed it right, Power Rangers is just about up. Check it out if you're a Power Rangers fan. What kind of game is it? Like, I know nothing about it.
Oh man, so it's
Which I guess is on you, but anyway.
Oh, I haven't talked about it enough. I've been living and breathing Power Rangers for the past 2 weeks. But it's a cooperative game
Okay.
designed by Jonathan Ying. So he did Imperial Assault, Doom,
Sure. Sure.
other things.
And miniatures and the whole big, that's why it's on Kickstarter type of thing.
It's got over 120 figures, and they're oversized too. So like a Ranger is like 2.5 inches. They're pretty big. But we each play a different Ranger with our own unique deck that gives us our own fighting style. We're working together to defend the city from all of these minions, foot soldiers, masters, monsters that appear. And yeah, they fight back.
This is Heroes of the Grid.
Yeah,
is that
Power
right?
Rangers Heroes of the Grid.
Yeah, well, you guys are. While you were talking, I pulled it up already. Quite a successful campaign.
Yeah.
Bravo. And these are some epic looking miniatures.
Yeah, the art's fantastic too. It's by Dan Mora, who did all of the artwork for the Boom comic series. So that's going to be on all the cards.
That's a weird combination, isn't it? I mean, not that it looks great. I just like, I guess I no, it looks really good.
It's
got a
different.
cool it's different, right? Like,
yeah.
But that makes, I think, different with IP is great, right? It makes it more fresh and interesting. I worked with a lot of IP at Disney, and anytime they let us do something a little askew was great, which wasn't often. Well, okay, but setting aside Renegade for a second, I mean, obviously they're awesome. I like them a lot, even though apparently I can't remember anybody's name. It sounded like you're digitally distributed, right? You basically work over Skype.
Yep.
And you were saying that working so closely, it's a smaller company, right? Or working so closely with the leadership at the company, you've had the opportunity to learn more and engage more and that kind of thing. So that's super exciting. I wonder, being somebody who worked in customer service and has worked in marketing, albeit getting into it now, and kudos to you for taking that French degree like up and up. But hey, I was a Japanese language and studies major at the University of Michigan, so I'm using that just about zero, other than some work I'm doing on the 100 Tori. But like, starting with on that customer service, like, what would you say for somebody who's sort of gotten that foot in the door? What are like the key things from your experience with customer service? Like, what are the key things you like to keep in mind, or like the most important things you'd tell somebody who just was hired and coming on in?
To do a good job, or to continue to grow?
No, to be successful in that role, to do a good job.
People always say like the customer's always right. However, there are very often moments where they are not correct. And it's really people skills, right? You have to learn how to manage their feelings and also the company's feelings, so everyone comes out happy. And it takes skill to turn a really upset person into a satisfied customer who's going to continue supporting your company. So I would say, if you're going to be a good customer service person, work on your empathy and just care. That goes along.
No, I completely agree with everything you said. I'm just curious, like how might you suggest somebody work on their empathy? Like, what's a good way to level up empathy? Like, how do you get that extra die roll on that one?
That's a good question. Just talk to people.
Talk to people.
Yeah. Just surround yourself with people, and be open to different perspectives. You don't have to agree with them, but people like to be listened to and understood. So just start with that. I understand your concerns. You fix them.
All right. And so the other thing you mentioned, which I think is really important in customer service, because there's that balance. Managing so there's understanding the customer and their concerns and their problem, and listening and talking and being cordial and all that. But then there's also dealing with the aspect of like the company requirements or game restriction. How have you seen people, or how would you recommend people handling that when you have to go back the other way and talk to the company about, hey, there's this person with this problem, can I do this? Do you have any tips to that kind of process?
So there are special cases, like someone will come to you and be like, oh, my box is damaged. This terrible thing happened. It's really important to me and I'm very sad. If your company policy is, we just don't replace boxes because it's really expensive to ship an empty box across the country.
People don't realize it basically, for the most part, requires you to empty a game and then ship a box.
Yeah, you have to open a game. So there's all those pieces that are useless now. And then you have to pay shipping for an empty box. It's just... yeah.
But go on.
Yeah, you have to use your best judgment. And, sometimes it's worth it to pay the shipping for an empty box if the person is obviously a very big fan of yours. and you don't want to lose them as a fan just because you don't want to pay $20 in shipping. So it's a case by case thing. For
Right.
repeated things like an issue that you see over and over, like there's a die that comes with too many pips, and you're like, this game has this issue. Don't be afraid to go to the company and be like, hey, so I've noticed this pattern. We should probably fix it, because they don't see. So you're helping the company that way too.
Yeah, and that information is super useful, right? When you're dealing with, you as a rep, you don't know it, but there may be that they started using a new die manufacturer, they changed a process, they rushed something, and understanding, hey, here's the type of thing that we're seeing in the behavior. This is a consistent issue, is super valuable. And it's not just on manufacturing. I mean, learning about like over product after product, like that kind of role structure isn't confusing, or people regularly have these types of questions. That kind of thing also is super valuable to like make a better game and a better product.
Yeah. Yeah, rule books especially, if you notice the same type of question being asked over all of your game titles, or just the same question about a specific game, you can fix that for the next printing or for your future items. So yeah, customer service people are basically superheroes.
It's true. Unsung superheroes. So the other set of questions, the other one is, so in marketing, right? Coming in from, not as, a 20-year vet of marketing, but someone who's new and immersed in the role, what would you say? And obviously working on, you have experience in conventions, you have experience with retail, you have experience with Kickstarter, like it's pretty epic. What, what are the things you would say? And a lot of people who watch my channel are in that sort of smaller pub, Kickstarter, indie category. Not all of them, but probably most. Like, what would you say are some critical things to keep in mind when marketing for a new game?
So one thing is exposure. You want to get your announcement, your game title everywhere. So I sometimes feel bad, like on announcement day. It's really exciting to me because I see all the comments and reactions. But I also have to spam the internet. I do simultaneous posts through our newsletter, on all of our social media pages, on industry pages. It's a lot. So for marketing, what I find valuable is scheduling posts ahead of time. So I can just do 7 a.m. Everything's out there. You also have to remember that people will instantly forget about it. So you have to keep talking about it and reinforcing Power Rangers, Power Rangers, Power Rangers, which is why our Twitter for the past 3 weeks has been nothing but Power Rangers, and I'm sure our board game fans are sick of it. However, that's what we got to do.
No, it's true. It's true, and it is a challenge when, especially for people who have a mixture of like personal communication, like their personal Facebook page and their public one. It's a very hard balance to get right, and like to not feel dirty that while you're doing it, right? And also just when you've gone too far or hit too many groups or sort of overexposed. But okay, exposure and thinking about it and certainly scheduling it helps just from a sanity perspective. What are some other tips?
What we've been using, especially for our licensed things, I'll just use Power Rangers again. Finding a super fan. So someone who loves the game and is telling all of their friends. So with Kickstarter especially, I don't know if you've seen this, but in the comments they tend to be like, they'll have conversations in the comments. They're super active. So there's this one person in our campaign who reposts everything we announce immediately, sometimes even before we do. I'm like, hey, hold on, that's my job. But
yeah, no, super fans are fantastic, and in particular because they're hands in a way, right? Like, and empowering fans and empowering ambassadors or whatever you want to call them is, and oftentimes these are people just doing it on their own, right? It's not like you're actually hiring this person, but doing things like providing assets, giving announcements, being thankful for what they're contributing often in almost every one of my Kickstarter campaigns, and they've sort of been different people, oddly enough. There's
Yeah.
always been a couple people that are sort of like, I wake up in the morning, they've already answered or responded to 5 different things. Like they're just like, oh, the card side is this, you can find it here, or oh,
I'd
just
announce
sort
it in this post.
yeah, just that kind of thing. But it's super super valuable.
Yeah,
So
it's valuable and it's heartwarming. Like it makes me so happy to see.
So find those folks and leverage them and support them. Better than saying leverage, probably support. And so one more.
Um, we use a lot of graphics, like our social media posts. We like to have them be consistent. So I'll post the same image across Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. But we also change it up. So if you do campaigns where you boost a post, you can target different people, and we might switch like one thing. We might change one character in the artwork or like the phrasing slightly. So having that feedback and being willing to try different things and see what works the best early on in whatever project you're launching is also helpful, because then when it becomes crunch time and closer to release, you can just do that very successful thing.
Yeah, and that kind of marketing and A/B testing is super valuable. It's something you can do pretty easily via the Facebook tools.
Mm-hmm.
I did an interview with Manny Tremblay and Nate Nate C. from the Dice Throne pre-Roxley, and they go into great detail in that Q&A on sort of how you might set some of that stuff up. But whether, if you can do it as far as marketing and ads and social media, but if you're really somebody who's maybe more willing to think about games as product as opposed to art, there are people who even go ahead so much as before they've decided their style, their look, feel, they'll actually test. This is probably more in video games than in board games, but there's no reason you couldn't do it in board games. Test out people's response to, hey, if my box looked like this, or my box looked like this, or my cover looked like this, and my cover looked like this. And rather than, like, I think the typical thing is people just post and go to the, like, arts and graphics Facebook group and say, hey, everybody, what do you think about my 3 things? And let me know your opinion. Valuable, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But it's very different when you're like, no, this image was now just seen by 1 million people, and 82% loved it, clicked and wanted to learn more about this style or this character, and 20% wanted to learn more about this style. You can actually pull it forward, right?
Yeah. But I also think that's a good opportunity to involve the fans, like
Sure.
have them participate in the game design. Like,
Yeah.
here's the options. Which ones would you like to see on the box cover? So you are A/B testing. You're doing your marketing thing, but the fans feel special because when the product exists and they see it on their shelves, they're like, oh yeah, that's the one I picked. That's really special to me.
No, I agree. I agree. Yes, I agree. Double negative. And even a little trick. I don't know when I mentioned it, but like another little trick is sometimes like oftentimes when you get to that part of marketing where you're like ready to show stuff, you have the, like, when the company's ready to do final marketing, you probably have the final art. However, if you sort of like save all the stuff you did in progress there, you can even harness some of that, albeit a little bit, differently, where you're like, hey, here's some early concept work, and people will give you their opinions, and you may be like, I already have the final piece. But it lets people do like seeing that process. I mean, it's probably hard. Like, I'm sure on Power Rangers and some other games, you don't have that. They're like the brand manager at the company. It's just like, you only get to show final art. None of the stuff But on other projects or smaller projects or things where you're not tied to a brand, there's an opportunity for people to feel like they saw how the inception, how it came to where it is today, and that's always something super valuable. Mm-hmm. We're coming at the half-hour mark. Yeah, it goes quick. Thanks so much for all the time and the insight, and what a cool, progression you've had so far.
Yeah.
And it sounds like things are going great with Renegade, so keep rocking that. But thanks so much for being on.
Thanks for having me, Ed. I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And thanks for everyone for watching. Bye. Hey everybody, Edo here, and Thanks for watching Gaming with Edo. Reviews over here on this playlist, League and Insider videos over here on this one. Subscribe, share, all that good stuff. But most importantly, play some great games. Thanks.